Oh, okay. Let me double check. Yep, we're recording. All right. All right. Hello. This is this week's video. It's actually going to be quite a short video because we have a midterm this week. This is just the last chapter before the midterm. And I'm posting this a day early because that way you have it and so forth. Just FYI on the midterm, just a reminder, you have the whole day to take it. You start it whenever you want. Once you start it, though, you have an hour and a half to finish it. It's only 34 multiple choice questions. Most students take about 30 to 45 minutes, if that. And it's multiple choice. It's multiple choice, and it's open book. Open book. All right, so we're gonna start chapter 15. It's only 2 slides, but it's one chapter, so it's actually pretty quick. Chapter 15 is about using your words and using your words well. All right. And so this finishes up the first half of the book. Um, by the way, if you have questions on why the first half is quicker than the second half of the semester, look at syllabus. We have 2 speeches during the second half. That's why. So this is chapter 50 is on using your words well. And so just a reminder, this is not your voice or anything like that. This is your word selection. The terms. This slide here, the terms are as follow. And pretty much all the ones that you see on this slide right here, the 6 terms are possible on the test. Just FYI, these are all possible. The first term is denotation. Denotation, if you actually think about the word, the actual definition of the word, the literal word itself. So when you hear denotation, think the word's definition. It's important to note that, and I'm going to pause real quick. I can't believe I forgot my water. So it's the actual definition of the word. I'll give you an example in a second, but before we do that, we need to talk about connotation. Connotation is your book has its definition, but the best way to remember it is the current or community or, definition, right? It's the more the how it's being used in today's vernacular. What I mean by that is simple. A denotation is just think of the word cap, right? Students know taught me this. When we think of cap, the denotation of cap is like baseball cap. Like the caps that I have on you can see on the shelf right here, and actually the more of the baseball type of caps are on this one over here. That's what we think of with cap, or the cap of cap of a bottle or something like that, right? That's a denotation. Now the connotation of cap means saying something false that's not true, right? It's kind of weird. No cap. But yeah, that's how it's used now. That word is used like that. So you have the rate. By the way, the denotation is still valid, but there's now a connotation that's different. Another example is actually cap itself again, because when I was growing up and afterwards when gangster rap um, was first getting big and popular and everywhere, cap meant shooting. So back then the connotation was that. And then later on, it became making fun of somebody. There's words like gas was another one that the denotation is, gas is, a smog, chemical, smoky, gas version of something. And then what was it, 2010s? I remember you hearing it in public schools as a way to make fun of someone, just like cap. Not cap, I mean, yeah, it was cap. So right there, the connotation changes so many different ways. So connotation for cap back maybe in the 90s was shooting somebody, then making fun of somebody, and now it means false, right? But the denotation has always been the same, which is cap on someone's hat or cap on a bottle or something like that. I always think of the Michael Jackson song "Bad" because growing up in bad always meant not good, but a long time, especially when I was a little kid, bad meant like tough. Actually meant cool. Actually meant good. And Michael Jackson has the famous song "Bad," which I always found funny because it's like, oh, this is a tough gang, and then when he turns into a gang member and he has all the shiny things. We thought it was funny when they were growing up. Ethnic vernacular. These are words that are commonly associated with ethnicities, right? Ethnicities, right? A modern example your book uses is Spanglish, for example, Spanglish. Cajun. They have the African American vernacular thing in the book, but it's words that are commonly associated with an ethnicity. That is ethnic vernacular. A good example of this is how different, how like different groups have their own individual words and so forth. This one I leave up to the students to decide, so forth, because we're not going to get into any particular. The best example, fair example, is Spanglish, and we're not going to get too much into the ethnic vernacular, but you get the gist, right? Get the gist. Regionalism. Now we're talking. Oh, by the way, Cajun goes under ethnicity because they refer to the mix of the French and the regional communities in Louisiana. All right. Regionalism. Now we're talking from the areas, right? So, like, for example, South has different regionalism words that they use. I remember being stationed in the South of Texas in y'all, right? And then New York and Boston and so forth. And regionalism is everywhere around the world. When I lived in Germany, I thought I knew all the words I needed when I was up in northern Germany. And then I went to the South and I'm like, what is this language? Mexico was a great example of that. My mom's side of the family, the Michigan side, the ugly mug. It's not ugly, it's just her side of the family, the Midwest side. I remember my aunt, and she wouldn't say soda, she would say pop. Or the weirdest one, and I'll never forget it, is she didn't say police station, she would say cop shop. You make the right on the cop shop. So yeah, regionalism, right? Regionalism. Cajun doesn't fall into this one because again, it's ethnic vernacular because it's referring to words that were created by the mixing ethnicities and so forth back in that. That's why it's not regionalism. But the South is considered regionalism. Jargon. Jargon is professional language. If you work a job with an IT department, the computer folks have different languages. A military. I remember all the different words that we had in the military. So that's important. Very important also, and it can be on the test as a clue to the term. We don't use jargon in public speaking because most of the time when you're giving speeches, you're speaking to a general public type situation. And even if you're speaking to a professional group, maybe there's different levels of knowledge within the professional community. So professional language, jargon, unless you like define the word that you use, should not be used because most of the time people are not going to get your jargon. In fact, I'm a big critic of my side in education when teachers use our jargon in front of students. In fact, I'm someone who doesn't like using jargon even when I'm talking to others in my community, in my groups. because of that. Standard American English. Standard American English is just our version of English. All right. Um, and that's important to know. This is something, and it goes into another chapter, but I like to say it on this one. If I had to ask you if which English is considered the version of English that people recognize the most, British English or American English, the answer is American English. And ask yourself why. Why is that? With our words and how we say it. Why is ours the most recognized? Because Great Britain colonized the world. That whole their empire, the sun never set on their empire, that was a true statement at one point. And so they colonized all over the place. And that's why English is ever. By the way, FYI, English will always be the number one language of the world. There's no going back. Right? The best other languages have is to be mixed in with it. And I can go off on that. Maybe if you have questions in class, but American English is the recognized version of English now, the most recognized version of English now because of Hollywood and U.S. media. All those decades of the U.S. churning out all those big movies and TV shows that got shipped and sent everywhere. And so that's why American English is the number one version of English, most recognized. And here's a fun fact. This is more about how we pronounce words, but we have all these different accents. The fun fact also is that Californians have an accent, which we don't know. And one of the reasons why we don't know that is, and by the way, I'm not saying how we use our words or what words. I'm not talking about the fact that we go, "What's up, dude? What's up, brah? Bro?" Not that. We have an accent to us. The reason why we don't realize it, not only because we're in California, is because California is the generic accent of English now, of American English specifically, because of, again, Hollywood. And I just like to point that out to show how important the media is to shaping our image and so forth. All right. Actually, I take it back. Not 6 terms. The first 5: denotation, connotation, ethnic, vernacular, regionalism, jargon to be on the test. Your book focuses on the fact that oral versus written, how there are 2 distinct differences between the oral word and the written word. The words we choose. The biggest one is formality. By the way, you need to pay attention to this. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Test question. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. So we tend to be more formal in our written word. In fact, when we do job interviews, we tend to try to talk the way we write. Right? So the written word is considered more formal, and it's more casual. So we tend to repeat our words in the oral, or in the oral conversation compared to the written, right? And so it's considered more dignified, lots of different things, and that leads into word choice. And the reason why the written is considered more formal, our word choice, we have a thesaurus when we write. We have access to lots of different things. We can review the stuff as well. Oral, it's on the spot a lot of times, and so we're just much more casual in the oral, and that includes our word choices. We don't. I mean, we try to be as have a robust vocabulary when we speak, but the fact of the matter is the convenience of the spoken word usually, keeps us limited in our word choice compared to the written and so forth. And then another example is gender. We tend to be more neutral and correct in the written, and then gender in the oral. When I went to firefighting academy in the Marine Corps, it was open, and even in the written, it was firemen, right? But now it's firefighters, and even the oral is firefighters. But People still say fireman in the casual and so forth. And firefighter is always used in the written. So it's important to note the distinction. And on a test, you might get a question like, which of these is not like the other? So I might ask you a question like, which of these is not a example of the oral word choice versus the written word choice? And so remember, written, we tend to be more formal. We have a lot more word choice, a lot wider vocabulary. We tend to be more neutral in gender and so forth. In oral, we tend to be more casual, less formal, repetitive, limited vocabulary, and um, more less neutral in gender. So yeah, so note the two very distinctions there. Words in contrast. This is abstract to concrete. Oh, I should have had these at the ready. It's important to note this is like one of the most important concepts in this class, and that is abstract to concrete. So our word choices can define if we're abstract and concrete. So what do I mean by that? You gotta imagine it this way. Here you have the blank slate, and if I take this dry erase marker, for example, and I do this. This side, this side here, actually I should do it like this. This side is more abstract and this is more concrete. Abstract, there's a lot of stuff can be written there, right? A lot of stuff can fall into there. And the concrete side is more focus. So an example of this is education. If I'm talking about education, represented by ed here, right? It's abstract. It could be lots of different things. Lots of different things. College, high school, elementary, public, private, profit, nonprofit. Um, those in the workforce, you have work training. That is education, right? Public education. When I was working in the library and having those computer classes for free, there's so many different ways to talk about education. So we limit it. We talk about for college, right? Now we eliminated a lot of stuff, but that's still which kind of college? Here at 2-year community college, 4-year private, public, profit, nonprofit, community, state, UC, upper echelon levels, right? So we're gonna put community college, and that's still a lot. Trade schools. Oh, by the way, trade schools are part of education. But trade school is part of community college. And then we have the 2-year colleges, the one that you're going to right now and all that stuff. And all the different disciplines. You got your math, your sciences, your English departments, all these stuff, political science. And so we're gonna go down to our public speaking class, PS, and that's how you get there, right? You start off with this huge abstract, a whole lot of things can fall into it, which is great. That means you have a lot to talk about, but at the same time, it's a lot more unfocused. So it's important to watch your words because if you're too abstract, you're too general, a lot of things can come in. Like if you're talking climate change, there's a whole lot of stuff there. Pollution, there's a whole lots of pollution. But if you're more defined, you can narrow it down. It's homelessness, a whole lot of stuff. Are we talking on the street homeless? Are we talking in the car homeless? Are we talking about the couch surfers that go to Cal State LA? Are we talking, you understand, there's so many different aspects. There's the abstract, or there's, again, the more narrow concrete. It's important to understand that. It's going to get more important in the next two speeches. But in the second and third speech. When you are using your words, you're setting your language, and it does a couple things. One is the tone. Remember, I said the difference between formal and written, and how we mimic our written words. Um, when we try to be formal, that sets the tone because you're using those words. You're using words you don't commonly use. I try to keep my words limited and not try to drop a bunch of a large vocabulary. Most of the time because I'm just I'm exhausted. But the other one set a tone because I want to get this information out to everybody. So it sets a tone for your situation. The word usage also helps you define who you are and how you're talking, what you're talking about, right? Um, if you are, it goes with tone as well, but if you use certain words, you show judgment. And so, and it also shows maybe emotional levels and all that stuff just by using the different kinds of words. Are you being persuasive, informative? Are you angry? Are you happy? Your word choices, your word usage can help set that language, right? And then it's unbiased. It is very important, especially going into the informative speech. Being neutral shows unbiased, using the right language and so forth. All right, let's finish up this chapter. There's one more slide. A whole lot of words. We're going to just go into them. And the first four words are the ones that are definitely on the test. There's another one that later that's on the test, but we're going to shoot through these very quickly. Metaphor. Metaphor is a comparison, right? You're comparing something to something else. Like if I say the phrase, he is a snake, that's a metaphor. It's a comparison. When I say he's a snake, when you think of a snake, that can be lots of things. He's slippery, he's slimy, he's sneaky, he's stealthy, he's dangerous, he's venomous, he's lying in wait. Lots of different things, but you're comparing somebody to a snake. That's a comparison. And a lot of times we use metaphors and similes and my favorite analogies to compare something that we know because we all seen a snake, right? In some way or another. But we don't know, we might not know who you're talking to about. In class, I would ask you about a family member. Who's the snake? But we get the gist, right? That's why metaphors are so great because it compares something we don't know to something we know, right? And keeping with the snake thing, that leads into simile. It is a less direct comparison. What do I mean by less direct? Um, I actually disagree with your book definition on this because I think it actually helps with the definition. But so metaphors, they say it's more direct because when you're hitting them with the snake comparison, you're putting everything on them, right? There's a whole lot of stuff there. Similarly, there's only a part of it. I think it makes it a little bit more defined with the simile because you use the word like or as. So instead of saying he's a snake, a metaphor, you say he he lies in wait like a snake. That's a simile. If you have like or as, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, you are using a simile for comparison, right? That the comparison is a simile. He is um his words are venomous like a snake, right? That is how it works. So you're not putting all of it into the snake basket. You're just putting it a little bit more defined with like or as. How it works. It helps your audience. The words help your audience understand something they don't know. Whoever this person you're talking about is something they do know. A snake. Personification. Personification, hint, hint, nudge, nudge as well, is whenever we take something we know as people and it's contributed to a person, and yet you put it on to something inanimate. That's personification. So the best example of this is my computer is sick. it has a virus. Is your computer at home, in bed, with the sniffles? No, no, it has a computer virus. And to explain what the computer virus does, it would take a lot of explanation. Or I can just tell you it's sick, meaning it's not working properly, that it's under the weather. It's not under the weather, but we understand, the effects of a virus on a person. So we say my computer is sick. To explain something that is more complicated, how a virus works, by using the personification. My car is acting up. It's having a tantrum, right? We've all seen that kid at the grocery store having a tantrum, causing all that noise. So we know what a tantrum is. But to explain all the different noises the car might be making in that moment, it's just too complicated. Right? Am I talking about the cylinder grinding? Am I talking the muffler hitting the thing? It sounds like something in the, and this and that. That's too much. So instead of saying that, it's making all these noise all at once. That car is throwing a tantrum. That's what personification does. It takes something we know personally, how a person acts, and puts it in an animate object, which is more technical and harder to explain very quickly. Crisis rhetoric is something I might go over in class on its own, but crisis rhetoric is when you are using your words to explain something monumental. Hint, nudge, nudge, something ominous as well. And so what do I mean by that? It's important when you're choosing your words to explain, like my classes during the day at Eli, because most of the students who were born after 9/11. I remember 9/11. I remember watching it live, right? And the feelings and the witnessing and so forth. It's hard to put it together. So you use your words well to explain the extent of it, right? I'll give you a personal example. It's not 9/11 related, but I lived in Yosemite National Park. Lots of crazy things happened during my time in Yosemite National Park. One of them was a massive rock slide that happened in our employee housing area, which I was there for, right? Now, I I can use like a metaphor or simile about the sky darkening, like when you walk into a movie theater and during the day and you walk out at night, and how your vision is different, your expectations are different. That feeling. By the way, I love that feeling. It's one of my favorite things about going to movie theaters and the change while you're there. But but here's the thing. Crisis rhetoric. So if I'm talking about, how I felt that day, we were all hanging out in one of the cabins playing video games. All of us enjoying our time off of work, and all of a sudden, when a loud, massive sound broke through our entire world at that moment, where it seemed like um, not cars piling into each other, but cars crashing onto each other from up high. That's what it sounded like. We knew because of where we were that the rocks had come down. And when we exited the cabin to see what was going on, what we expected of the day that was still going strong, on the clock, was night, because everything was brown and covered the sky, and there was no way to see anything outside of what was initially around us. And we were walking through this cloud, wondering what was going on. What do we have to do do we need to evacuate? Wondering what was going on when one of us saw a rock. We all lived in this place. We all knew every little feature of our little community during that winter. And one of us looked down and said, that giant rock is new. That is crisis rhetoric. right? The loud sounds, blacking out the sky, our complete perspective change. That's crisis rhetoric. It's using your words to put people into a position and so forth. Crisis rhetoric, just FYI as well, people use it in a very negative tone when they try to scare people. They make it sound like this is going on for everybody or so forth. We see it a lot when politicians are talking about crime and they make it sound like it's something that is common when in reality it's not. Or it's they prescribe it to somebody and it's actually prescribed to another community. There's a lot of things. So crisis rhetoric is, we talk about ethics. Well, you got to have proper ethics to use it correctly. All right, those 4 words are going to be on the test. Here are a bunch of other words you need to know. Omission is when you leave something out. Something was expected. And so if you're talking about, your book talks about mountain climbing, but you don't mention mountain climbing, you're talking about, you're saying things like, going up a certain, on the side of a cliff as you're going up. You don't say it properly because you use your words to explain it. Inversion is when you change your word order unexpectedly. It's a nice little marker to create something. Your book uses John F. Kennedy as an example. This we pledge or something like that. But the best example of inversion is Yoda. The way Yoda talks, that's inversion. Suspension. It's another little effect that you can use your words. This is when you want to have a mystery to what you're saying until you leave out the word until the very end to solve the mystery. Omission is when you leave out the word entirely and you use your words to explain it. And so your audience puts it together so they're likely to remember it. Suspension is like, oh, what's happening? And then the killer was found in the broom closet. Bum, dum, dum. That's suspension. It's going to eventually get there. All right. Cadence. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. This is the other word that's on the test. Cadence is your rhythm of language. Your rhythm of language. Sorry. Rhythm of language. Your rhythm of language. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. It's on the test. Your rhythm of language. It's a little thing. It's like your signature, but your words and how your words can shape your sound in a way, and so forth. You ever met someone who uses a lot of big words, and so they have an incredible vernacular and you expect it from them? That is your cadence, right? There's other little tricks you can do. A lot of these are not on the test. None of these will be on the test, and a lot of them I don't want you to actually know, and I'm just going to skip through them. One of them is very easy. Repetition. That's the most common one. If you have a parent that repeats themselves to emphasize something, that's repetition. That's what that is. Parallelism, something to do with your word choices, mimicking each other. Don't worry about it. Antithesis, when you mean the opposite of something. Alliteration, it's another little trick you can do with your grammar and so forth. Read about it in the book, but I wouldn't use it. Onomatopoeia is when you use words that sound like exactly how they sound, like buzz and murmur. The only one of those words I want you to remember is repetition because it's the easiest of them. Everything else is extra and bonus. In fact, I don't want you to do that. So why do we care? Your words have structure to them. Your words have a structure to them. Okay? Your words have a structure to them. So if you choose your words well, you're providing a structure for your audience. Your metaphors, your similes, your repetitions, your omissions, these are all your structures that your audience will recognize. Because we're all used to, like the inversion thing, changing your word order. When you do that, it kind of sets people like, what's going on? It's like a marker. Because again, we have a structure to our words and it shapes your voice. There's 3 ways we do it. We do it with our figurative images, right? Those are the first 4 words. And those are the ones that, because I always tell students, you can always, mess around with how you choose your words. But the easiest way to do it is our figurative images, your descriptions, your connections. These are the things that we do all the time to get people connected. I mean, he is a snake metaphor simile situation is very common because we gossip about people and we do that stuff. We do say, oh, my car is acting up and so forth. And it connects your audience with what they don't know with what they know. And that's why we use it, right? They're not all there for the rock side or 9/11, but your word choices can get them there. That's what figurative images is. These are the most important. This is why they're on the test. These are the easiest, is the ones we do all the time. Drama, your omission, your aversion, your suspension. These are your word choices being a storyteller type device. It leaves a marker. Like I said, with the inversion, it leaves a marker. Like, oh, something happened here. The word order is different. Or they didn't say what this is about, but they're describing it, and I can figure out it's about mountain climbing, a mission. It's a marker for your audience so let them know something's going on. And then cadence is your rhythm of language. It's your voice. It's your selection of words, and where that is becomes your voice. Are you more formal or less formal? Stuff like that. And your cadence has a lot of odd things like onomatopoeia, this alliteration. But the best way to remember that is repetition. Because people who repeat themselves do it on purpose. And it becomes their thing. Right? It becomes their thing. So you expect it from them. All right. For your participation, there's only one for this one, so only 5 points for this one. I want you to write a metaphor or a simile comparing something that is known to people, make sure it's classroom appropriate, something that is well known to everybody, and something that is not well known. So, for example, if there's a taco place that's close to you, not many people have been to, you can use so and so taco place is like in something that's well known, and so forth. So something like that. All right, now you know what to do for your 5 points, and you know what words will be on the test. All right, there you go. Please stop recording.